In other news, senators are not satisfied with the progress of the rehabilitation of Boracay after nearly 2 months of the island's closure, but the Environment Department says everything is on track. Our senior correspondent, Cecil Ardizabal, reports.
The Senate takes a look at how stakeholders are rehabilitating Boracay 2 months since it was closed. President Duterte in April ordered the closure of Boracay after calling it a cesspool. Senators are disappointed the cleanup task force has not identified households and commercial areas connected to the sewage system up to now. Boracay has 2 water concessionaires. The Boracay Island Water Company admits only half of its concession coverage are connected to the sewerage system and only 5% of its more than 4,000 residential users are connected. The other water concessionaire, Boracay Tubi Systems, has yet to submit its records.
This is the very most important issue, di ba? Wastewater, di ba? Eh kung hindi natin ma-resolve kung sino responsible for taking care of the wastewater, how can we solve this problem?
Senator Antonio Trillanes remains skeptic on the island's closure, believing that the problem of a water waste and sewerage system in Boracay can be resolved even without closing it down. Trillanes asks the Environment Department who was responsible for closing Boracay in the first place.
NEDA is tasked to come up with a plan, medium-term rehabilitation plan, within 3 months from the issuance of the EO.
Hindi pa pala kayo ready eh. Bakit nyo sinara? Anong explanation? Bakit nyo sinara na wala pa pala kayong master plan?
Tinignan namin yung kung sino yung clean water provider, yung kanilang sistema, at doon po ang unang focus, especially ng DNR.
Hindi nyo nga alam kung sino, you don't even have a list kung sino yung hindi naka-attach sa main sewage line up to this point.
Environment Undersecretary Epimaco Densing III says they're looking at a soft opening of Boracay by the first week of September. Senator Frank Drilon agrees with Senator Trillanes that the rehabilitation of a decades-old problem cannot be accomplished in just 6 months. He is proposing a long-term solution, such as the creation of the Boracay Development Authority instead of the Boracay Rehabilitation Task Force to do the job for Boracay. Drilon requests that West Cove owner Crisostomo Aquino be subpoenaed to attend the next Senate hearing. He is said to have appeared in Malacanang. Drilon likewise questions the idea that Boracay be placed under land reform.
Who recommended that Boracay be subject of land reform?
To cover under the Grand Reform Program, Boracay Island is the initiative of the President, Mr. Senator.
Senator Villar apparently shares Drilon's view that there's something wrong in putting Boracay under land reform.
Eh di tulungan nyo na matitled na doon sa mahihirap if that is the legal way of doing it. But never announced na igagawa nyo land reform. Natatakot ang mga tao sa inyo. Ako nga nasa-shock sa inyo eh. Ba't nyo na-announce na ganun, hindi nyo pa pinag-aaralan?
A triple whammy for former President Benigno Noynoy Aquino III. The ombudsman finds probable cause to indict him together with former Budget Secretary Butch Abad for usurpation of legislative powers over the Disbursement Acceleration Program, or DAP. We have details on that decision in just a bit, but before that, and before this, last year, Mr. Aquino was charged with graft and usurpation of authority, also by the ombudsman, for the botched Oplan exodus in Mamasapano in Maguindanao in January 2015. Now, that operation meant to neutralize terrorist Zulkifli bin Hir alias Marwan. That operation killed 44 Special Action Force members and several civilians. This year, the former president is facing charges over the dengue vaccine, Dengvaxia, along with some of his former officials. Let's try to make sense of it all. Our AC Nichols joins us on the phone. AC, tell us about this ombudsman decision on the DAP, the Disbursement Acceleration Program, and what happens next.
The former President Noynoy Aquino may soon face another case before the Sandigan Bayan. This after the ombudsman found probable cause to charge him with usurpation of legislative powers over the controversial Disbursement Acceleration Program, or DAP. The ombudsman cleared Aquino last year of any crime over DAP and found just former Budget Chief Butch Abad liable for the same offense. But complainant Bayan Muna filed an appeal seeking Aquino's indictment. The appeal was only partially granted because Bayan Muna also wanted Aquino charged with graft. In a statement issued this afternoon, the ombudsman said Aquino is liable because he authorized Abad's actions in carrying out DAP. The fund disbursement mechanism first came under fire when former Senator Jinggoy Estrada, in a privileged speech back in 2013, said he received additional pork as incentive for the impeachment of then Chief Justice Renato Corona. Abad clarified the funds given to senators were part of DAP, a mechanism to fast-track public spending amid concerns at the time that underspending hampered economic growth. The Supreme Court declared parts of DAP unconstitutional in 2014. Aquino is currently facing trial for graft and usurpation of authority at the Sandigan Bayan over the 2015 Mama Sapano tragedy. Now, aside from Mama Sapano and DAP, the Dengvaksha controversy is also hounding Aquino past his presidency. The ombudsman is currently investigating Aquino's possible liability over the dengue vaccine mess after several complaints had been filed against him and his former health officials. Meanwhile, the former president can still appeal this recent ombudsman decision. Pia?
AC Nichols there reporting. We're trying to reach out to the camp of former President Noynoy Aquino. His spokesperson, Abby Valte, sent a text message to CNN Philippines saying, and we quote, "I have no instructions yet. We'll update you if he," meaning former President Aquino, decides to release a statement, unquote. And members of the council that recommends appointees for court vacancies get down to work as they search for a replacement for Ombudsman Conchita Carpio Morales, who retires next month. Today, 9 candidates for the post face the Judicial and Bar Council. Our Justice correspondent Anjo Alimario has more.
Labor Secretary Silvestre Bello opens the public interview among the candidates for the Ombudsman post. Bello says this is his last chance to help President Duterte in his crusade against corruption. Now asked if he has a pending case before the office of the Ombudsman, Bello shows a clearance to prove he has no pending administrative and criminal cases. Bello says cases against him were resolved in his favor. Having served under 4 presidents, Bello says this shows he has the skills and he is trustworthy. Sandigan Bayan Justice Efren de la Cruz says he will continue pursuing pending pork scam cases at the Ombudsman, and if there's merit, he will prosecute those responsible. De la Cruz's division at the Anti-Graft Court is currently handling the pork scam cases of former Senator Bong Revilla. Edna Herrera Batacan was a lawyer of President Duterte. She says she wants to change the graft-ridden office of the Ombudsman. On the pronouncement of President Duterte that he doesn't want to appoint a woman ombudsman, Batacan says she doesn't believe this. She argues the president loves the women in his life. A JBC member quizzed Supreme Court Associate Justice Samuel Martires on the opposition filed against him when he refused to inhibit on the case of former Chief Justice Maria Lourdes Sereno. He allegedly faith-shamed Sereno during the oral arguments in Baguio, but Martires says he never shamed a woman in public or in private. Martires points out it was his intention actually to defend Sereno, that there's nothing wrong for a person to invoke God. After the public interviews, the Judicial and Bar Council will deliberate and will come up with a short list. President Duterte will appoint the next ombudsman from this short list.
Aside from the next ombudsman, the Judicial and Bar Council is also searching for the next Supreme Court Chief Justice. The 90-day period to fill the vacancy for the post began yesterday when the High Court upheld with finality its earlier decision to remove Maria Lourdes Sereno as Chief Magistrate. 8 justices voted to deny Sereno's appeal, standing firm on their original decision to oust her. Only 6 stood by Sereno. The JBC has opened the application and nomination process for Sereno's replacement. President Duterte will appoint the next Chief Justice. For ousted Chief Justice Maria Lourdes Sereno, the next Chief Magistrate should have the independence of mind and the ability to stand up to the most powerful man in the country, among others.
The standard for any Chief Justice must always be independence of mind, fortitude, the ability to stand up even against the most powerful man on the country, and the ability to say no to the President, and to be a model for every judge in the country, and to be able to look at every judge in the eye and say, stand up, I stood up, you should also. The constancy of doing the right thing at the right time is more important also than connections, the political connections.
Yes. When asked if she knows of someone inside or outside the Supreme Court that fits that description, Sereno declined to answer. Well, the acting Chief Justice is not accepting any nomination to take over from Maria Lourdes Sereno. In an interview with CNN Philippines, Senior Associate Justice Antonio Carpio explains why.
Because my position was that quo warranto is not the right thing, that the sitting justice can only be impeached by the Senate, removed by the Senate. And if I accept an appointment arising of that vacancy, that means in effect I'm impliedly accepting that kind of removal. As a personal choice, I'm declining any nomination as a personal choice.
Moving on to another story, authorities see rice prices going down a bit as soon as imported stock hits markets. Our AC Nichols gives us the details.
The country ran out of cheap rice earlier this year as government failed to replenish its buffer stock on time. But by next week, consumers can again buy cheap rice through the National Food Authority. Authorities have begun unloading rice shipments from Vietnam and Thailand.
Pag andyan yung ating na-unload natin yung mga bigas natin, automatic yan. Very short lang naman ang inspection ng quality and documentation.
The country will ship in some 250,000 metric tons or 5 million sacks of rice through a government-to-government procurement contract. The imported rice will keep prices of the staple steady as government replenishes its buffer stock after the harvest season. The rice shipments actually arrived 2 weeks ago, but bad weather prevented their unloading in the ports. Once available in the market, the imported rice will be sold for 27 pesos per kilogram for regular milled and 32 pesos per kilogram for well-milled rice. The NFA sees commercial rice prices getting cheaper by a peso or two when the imported rice hits the market. In the meantime, NFA Administrator Jason Aquino said some sectors will also be able to buy NFA rice for a much cheaper price to help them cope with the effects of the train law.
We will implement a 10% reduction of the price for NFA rice, and this will be given to the poorest of the poor and to be identified by the DSWD. So we're just waiting for the implementing rules and regulations from DBM.
The NFA's buffer stock was depleted as supply was distributed for relief to areas hit by calamities late last year. Social workers use NFA rice in food packs during disaster.